Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fairbanks Year-Round Podcast. As you may be able to tell, it is just going to be a solo episode again. This was my fault, not the guest. I'm excited to have her come back and get the recording done. I was sick, and I'll spare you all the nitty-gritty details on that. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of nitty-gritty details to be said. But you may also notice that I'm going to be handling the producing side. My wife has not left me, don't worry. Again, just our days got all switched up, so it's hard to get our schedules lined up outside of what we normally do. So I like to take these solo episodes to kind of dig in more to a topic that is about real estate, but also just kind of about life and what I've been thinking about lately. And lately, I don't know, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and my wife can attest to it, is hard things, doing hard things. Buying real estate can be a hard thing for a lot of people. I've done it enough where it's become easier for me, of course, but the first time I did it, as I recall back, the whole time, I remember feeling distinctly, and maybe not everyone feels this way, but the rug is about to get pulled out from under my legs. It's an unsettling feeling when you are under contract, but you're not quite closed. And I always say, as an agent now, nothing's closed until it's closed, because it's true. So at any time, something could go awry, and that was really stressful for me. And as I look back and now I'm thinking as I'm talking, every single sale has felt that way, except maybe my most recent one, which was really smooth. Shout out to the lender, Ken Bouthillier, who did that one. But it wasn't the lender's fault in the other ones, just if they're listening as well. But it was a smooth deal that I had very little concerns about, which was really great. But it is a hard thing for a lot of people. And I wanted to talk about why we should be doing more hard things in our life and not looking to avoid hard things. So we're going to start with the optional hard things. And if you guys know me at all, you know that I love jujitsu as a hobby. It's my number one hobby for sure. I wish I could just do it every day. Sadly, it doesn't seem to want to pay as much as real estate. I do love doing real estate. I always have to make that clear. But it's something very different. Jiu-jitsu for me is like a very physical game of chess where everybody is looking for a hole in the other person's defense and they're looking to wiggle their way through. And it's not like fighting. It's similar. You can get hurt. Most people from time to time will get hurt. To be honest, I've hurt myself numerous times, but you get better at injury prevention, which is great. But also I'm not getting beat in the head and having all kinds of concussions all the time with like boxing and sparring. I really love boxing and sparring. I wish I could do more of that, and maybe I'll figure out a way. But again, I just don't want to get hit in the head over and over. So this is a nice outlet for that. But for all the fun things that it is for me, it is also a tough thing. So I do it early in the morning. So getting up early in the morning can be tough for a lot of people. It's tough for me a lot of days. But again, it helps that I love doing it. Getting choked out sucks, and having your vision close in around you or having your arm hyperextended or, injuring yourself, again, not intentionally, happens. And it's a pretty trashy thing. So these are hard things. So why do I subject myself to jiu-jitsu in particular? Again, it's obvious that I do enjoy it, and I like getting better. And I like how things feel after I've done something hard. So we talked about the practice of jiu-jitsu. Now I want to talk about competition. I just came from a competition this last weekend here. Went down to Anchorage for the state jiu-jitsu championship. And that for me is very, very hard. This is only my second one. I'll give you a little history of the first one. It's just tough. I don't love doing competitions. So last year I did my first one. I was a white belt. I'd been training, we'll get maybe 18 months, a year-ish, and I just did terrible. I did so bad. It's a single elimination. I got knocked out in the first round in my weight class, which was the super heavies, which is 222 pounds and up. I was like 225 pounds. So I was at the bottom end of that, got knocked out. And then I'd entered into the open weight class, which anybody can be in. And again, got knocked out in that. I was pretty depressed. And I do want to come back and talk about failures. But then this year I go. And again, I had a lot of that in my mind, and I knew I had to change it. I knew I didn't want to stop after one competition that I felt did not go as it should have. I didn't show up like I should have. So just long story short on this one, again, super heavyweight. I was a little heavier at 235. But there was only, now I'm a blue belt also, so I ranked up, so they do change. So I was in a blue belt division. There was only 3 of us all together. And so I did take gold this weekend, which is hoorah, hoorah. But again, it's really hard. And so a lot of people, you could just say, don't do it. And it would be totally fine not to do it. I'm not saying everyone has to go do a jiu-jitsu competition. However, these optional hard things are super important to get done because sometimes you run into non-optional hard things. And if you can plan and be as, I hate to say comfortable because hard things make you uncomfortable, but at least be as prepared as possible, we'll say, for something that's hard. It's going to make you much better prepared for the things that you're not expecting, so you're still, there's no way to expect the unexpected, obviously, but you're going to be a lot more mentally tough and ready to go if you've done these hard things. So again, with the house buying, it all relates back. If you have something hard in your life that you want to push further into. Another thing I do is strength training. I know these are both kind of very physical representations, but when you're under a big heavy bar and you're pushing it, squatting down and standing back up, it can be daunting. The mornings you wake up and you don't want to do it. And I've certainly skipped, and I've done things I shouldn't have done because I was afraid of the weight or whatever the reason may be, or it was just too hard and I didn't feel like doing it that day. And none of these are good things to go for. You want to be able to complete. So you're looking at buying a house, but it's like, hey, this is, especially when you have a great agent such as myself, like this is something I've never done. If it's your first time, or this is something I have done in the past and maybe I had a bad experience with, just like my first jiu-jitsu tournament, you've got a great realtor who's going to take care of you. His name's Blake, if you're in this area. And just know that, hey, I've done all these other hard things. That's how I like to do. I like to remind myself of all the other hard things that I've done with my wife frequently. I would say, at least physically, one of the hardest things she's done is childbirth. And she's done it 3 times and about to do it a 4th. But it's like, hey, this thing that's stressing you out, you're building it up to be bigger than it is in your head. You gave birth to a child, which is pretty intense, right? So anyways, those are good things to keep in mind. Is if you give yourself hard things that are optional, then the non-optional things you'll have more practice for. And just like anything, using a muscle, you adapt to things and you change and your body changes. And that is physical, that is mental. You become a tougher person. I'm looking at my notes. I forgot. So the next point on doing hard things is, when I was younger, I was always looking for the easy way. I looked at the older generation of hard workers in particular. We'll talk about careers. And everything was all about hard work. And you look at a lot of people who work really hard, and at least financially, they're in the same spot they were, or very similar spot when it's time to retire. They don't have enough money and they've not made their way up. But you look at their life and they're working 2-3 jobs. They're doing the best they know to do, right? And so I started to look at this, and this is when things like the 4-hour work week were coming out, or at least I was aware of them. Excuse me. And I thought, we don't need to work harder. We need to work smarter, which is not a bad line. I always want to work smarter. However, it can kind of go too far, where you're trying to do as little as possible to get the results you want, which again, it's hard because that's not a bad mindset to have. I guess you're looking for an easy way, and even doing something really smart is not always easy. So working smarter doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes you're bucking trends and you're doing things that everyone's questioning you about, and you're having to push through a lot of adversity to do the smart thing. In my opinion, this happens a lot in life. So I've kind of swung back. Younger me was like, yeah, I want to work less and less and less. And I've now swung back where it's like I'm looking to institute harder and harder things in my life to become a tougher person without being stressed all the time. Because there's something different between doing something hard and doing something that is maybe mentally stressing. So again, a hard barbell exercise is stressful for the body. And if you overstress, or what we call overtrain, you're going backwards. Your body becomes weaker because it can't recover in time. And recovery is really what you want. So you're trying to stress your body to get the recovery and the adaptation that comes from it. So same with hard things. You can't just be living in life of more and more hard stuff. However, the more you do, the more acclimated you get. So if you were squatting 135 pounds and you've worked your way up to 300 pounds on the squat, the 135 pounds no longer is stressful to you. It's not going to do anything. You're going to detrain your body if you go back to that level of stress. So with the hardships in your life, I would want to be scaling myself up. And I'm trying to make this sound like it's not a miserable where I'm just always stressed out all the time. Because again, that's not the goal. And what comes with what a lot of people think of stress is when you're doing hard things is really the failure from those hard things. So missing a lift, failing the competition that you go to, your house deal falling apart. And that failure is where a lot of people are associating a lot of stress. And even the fear of that failure comes a lot of stress, which fear, just as a side tangent here, it's a useful thing. You want to be afraid of bears. You want to be afraid of bears and stuff. But I guess we'll reposition that to worry. Worrying about things generally doesn't help. Sometimes you need to be stressed and you need to have some worry about, let's say, your personal finances. If you're at rock bottom, you need to be all hands on deck to try to figure that out, and you need to be working through it. But sometimes there's things that are not solvable by you thinking them out. It just, some things need to happen and you need to wait and see what the outcome's going to be. And that's the kind of worry I want to stay away from, where you're waiting on a response for an offer and you're just stressed to the max. And I know it's not as easy as just being like, hey, don't stress about it. I know that you're going to do what you're going to do, but to a certain degree, it's like, hey, get your mind off it, go do something else, because they're going to respond what they're going to respond, and we're going to do the best we can do. And again, if we come to an agreement, hunky dory. If not, we got to move on. So I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, failing. Yeah. So that's the fear side. So the fear of failing, and the failing itself is very stressful and hard on people when you do hard things. If you do hard things, you're going to fail. If you never fail, you're not pushing yourself far enough. So you've heard this a million times. I don't really think there's any failure, I guess, until death. And you can't keep picking up and going. I hate to call death a failure, though, because it's a very natural thing that happens to everybody. But if you miss the mark of what you wanted, we'll say, and that's what a lot of people associate as failure, such as me going down to a competition, of course, wanting to win gold. That's the goal. And then my first one, not, and losing right away to someone, in my opinion, I felt like I should have beat, but I didn't perform like I should have. So what I noticed between the two competitions, the one last weekend and the one last year, is the one that I won was way less impactful. It was great having my hand raised. But like within, I'd say 30 minutes of winning gold, I looked at my wife and I was like, I think this is my last one. I didn't really get everything. I didn't want to go out on losses, because it would be easy to look back and be like, would I have enjoyed that, or would I have done that more if I hadn't lost? But now winning, it was kind of like, hey, this is not giving me what I want from it exactly, this particular competition. And there's a lot of stuff. We don't have to go into the details, but the biggest thing for me is like the travel down to Anchorage and stuff. So I'm sure I'll do some tournaments. I'm going to try pushing for more jiu-jitsu tournaments up here locally, some more small, like especially the less stressful stuff where you're just like show up and it's a day and you're not like waiting around, anyways, with 500 competitors all standing around. It's just a very different feel. But the failure one, as opposed to when I won gold, it stuck with me. Like, again, this has only been like 5 days ago that I won, and which is great. I feel good about it, all the things, but it's really not impacting my life very much. As opposed to when I lost, I was like, I don't even know how to express. Like, it sounds silly, but I was really shook. There's a lot of mental things that I had come up that I was like, honestly embarrassed about. First off was the fear of the other competitors. When I looked at them, well, if you don't know my history, I was 160 pounds as a full-grown adult for a long time, and I decided to gain weight. So I still see myself, I've always been skinny until a few years ago. I still see myself as a skinny 160-pound, 6'1.5" guy. And so I looked at these competitors that were, and I was maybe 225, and I think I went against someone's 240, 250, but again, very similar size, and they just seemed like giants to me. So before I'd even started, I felt like, I defeated myself afterwards looking back at it. But in the moment, I was like, oh my gosh, these are giants. I can't beat them. And I just overplayed their abilities in my head, basically, and how big they were. It's like, oh, you look at me, especially we had videos of it. It's like, I'm the same size as these guys. It's just funny what your mind will do to you. But those losses really stuck with me. The mentality stuck with me, and it totally changed how I do jujitsu and how I think about things. And again, to come back and to be able to win, it seems like, hey, that's great. A lot of these theories and things that I have been proven. Shout out to Garrett Hartley from Revolution. He's the one who says this is basically tournaments are the proving grounds for our theories, and our theories are what we practice and drill and get these moves down. But we have to see if they're actually going to work. It's not a real life fight situation because we're not punching each other in these tournaments. However, it's much more realistic because people are not letting you get past or anything like that. They're also doing their best to win. So it gives you the most realistic without getting punched in the face, I guess you can say. So the failure stuck with me way more, and it gave me way more benefit. We'll see, I guess, a year from now how I feel about the gold. I could be very different, but just from the very first, like I was in this weird trance right after. I could hardly sleep that night. It just really played with my mind a lot after I had lost. So all of that to say that quote unquote failure, the missing the mark from what you expected or the goal that you had when you're doing hard things, is to be expected, and it's to be almost cherished, the very famous, and I've brought this up before, Jocko Willink, who's an ex-Navy SEAL, who has this whole little speech, whatever you want to call it, monologue on good. I shouldn't impersonate him. Whatever happens in your life, good. You got this going on, good. You fall down, good. Like everything's good. And I think a lot of people, I just heard someone, I don't want to say misrepresent, but I feel like misinterpret what he was saying, where you're pushing down your emotions. Like bad things happen and you ignore them and you say, oh, everything's good. And that is not what I feel like that is. It's realizing that everything that happens to you is actually good. And it's changing your belief system. So, and it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, hey, you had this super negative thing happen to you, and this super hard thing happened to you, and you fell down in life in a bigger way than just skinning your knee, and there's always something good that comes out of it. So we can't go back, we can't change it. And anyone can say, hey, well, you don't know what I've been through. It's way too hard. You'll never say that's good. You would never wish that on anybody. And it's like, yeah, I would probably agree. I have daughters. I don't wish any bad things on them. However, I do wish they have hardships because it is important. But if these things happen, you can continue to say this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, which is, again, probably true. Or you can look at it and look at what's the benefits that you get from it. Did you become tougher? Whatever it may be. But again, we're going back to, and I hate to get to the really deep, dark stuff, but we'll just take it back to something easy like the competition that so affected me. And it totally changed how my game was. So we'll circle this all back around to real estate now and say, hey, you missed out on a deal, an offer. Something happened in your life and you couldn't buy a house and you lost your earnest money, which would suck. That would be suck. But you would learn a lot. It's like, hey, here's something that could happen. Here's an option that we can, maybe plan ahead for, and something will change. But anyways, I think I'm pretty much done. I'm laughing because my camera is, it just stops recording half the time. So it just now stopped recording. So if you're watching this, I'm going to overlay something. That's not me talking. If you're listening, it doesn't affect you at all. But anyways, here's a good. My camera went out. I've got to solve what's going on with that. This is like the third recording where it's been doing that. So I got to get a different camera or something. So anyways, to put everything in a bow, I think we should do more hard things. I think the easy way doesn't work. You can have easy times. You can have good times. But I think easy for too long makes you soft. And when the hard things inevitably come, because hard things always come, you won't be prepared for them. So even if things are really easy, it's easy to be on cloud nine and just through the roof happiness, which I'm not saying people shouldn't be happy, but try to maintain steady. Because if you can cap your peaks where like, hey, you just stay calm, like I'm happy, I'm not stressed, I'm very content in where I'm at, and everything's going good for me. I'm not going to get gloaty. I'm not going to get cocky. I'm going to know like, hey, this is a good time and I'm going to ride this out. I'm going to enjoy this. But I'm also going to know in the bad times, I'm going to ride this out and I'm going to enjoy this because it is what it is. So in closing, if you want to sell real estate, use me. So, no, I'm joking. This is very kind of unrelated to that, but it is all related to everyone's life. And the biggest purchase that most people make is their house. It's been said a million times. And it's something that's hard. So if you want somebody like myself helping you through that hardship, that's great. Little self-promotion here. But just know that you're going to make it through. It's not a big deal. It's all been done before, thousands and thousands of times. And again, especially if you've got a great realtor like myself, they're going to make it as smooth as possible for you. But it still could be hard. That doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. It's going to be smooth as possible, but deals are deals, and we got to work through whatever comes our way. So thank you so much for listening. This has been the Fairbanks Year-Round podcast. And in lieu of making you listen to the normal ad, since I've already promoted myself a ton there, if you do want to do a deal with me, I'm with the Summit Realty Group here in the Fairbanks area. You can reach me at my number, 907-651-8356. Call or text, of course, or you can email me at blake@akblake.com. Go to my website, akblake.com. I got properties and all the things there, of course, and you can sign up and get in contact with me that way as well. So again, thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you next week with the camera situation figured out. I'm going to guarantee that. I don't know what it is, but we're going to get that worked out. And we're going to have a guest. So actually, it is going to be, well, I shouldn't say, just in case things change. It'll be fun. All right, see you then. Bye.